Sometimes you pick a game because it looks interesting, other times it's because it's been haunting your PlayStation home screen like a ghost that used to live there rent-free. I first started Tales of Zestiria back when it was part of the PlayStation catalog, one of those why not downloads you forget about until suddenly you're 10 hours deep and emotionally invested in a kid you just met. And before I even got halfway through the game disappeared from the catalog. No warning, just poof. One day I had Seraphim and dramatic music, and the next day, nothing. Just a locked game and a lingering sense of betrayal. So now, months later, I've returned, with a physical copy this time, a disc, which, by the way, feels strangely powerful in 2025, like I've acquired a relic of my own, the Shepherd's Disc, if you will. That's a game reference. Anyway, welcome to Tales of Zestiria, a game that, if you're not familiar, asks, what if we gave you a group of lovable anime archetypes and asked you to save the world from invisible sadness? And I said, sure, why not? It's a longer game than the ones I've covered before, so rather than stuffing everything into one massive video, I'm going to break this down into episodes. Think of it like a multi-part documentary, but with more magic and significantly fewer war crimes, hopefully. I'll be going through the story beat by beat, analyzing major events, conversations, themes, and character development, or at least the moments that are pretending to be character development. I'll look at what the game tells us, what it shows us, and what it accidentally reveals because someone left the exposition hose running too long. Now, full disclosure, as of writing this intro, I haven't actually finished the game yet, which some people might say is a problem, but I say it's a fresh perspective. I'm approaching this like a blind playthrough that suddenly decided to major in narrative analysis halfway through Act 2. So if later episodes end up with me screaming into a pillow because the ending pulled a 180, that's just part of the charm. Probably. If you want to play along or watch the anime, this part will take us up to the part where our protagonist passes out due to being overwhelmed. If you're new to the world of Zestiria, all you really need to know is this. We're in a world where two kingdoms are fighting, humans can't see the magical spirit people called Seraphim unless they've been spiritually upgraded, and bad vibes literally transform people into demons. Also, there are a lot of ruins in this world. You'd think someone would just fill them in with concrete by now. Anyway, now going into spoiler territory, the opening cutscene, the one that happens when you hit new game, lays quite the foundation for us. Let's get into it. It's a familiar story, one that sounds a lot like a bedtime tale told by someone who really wants you to sleep through the apocalypse.
The Legend of the Shepherds.
Now, you know it's serious when the job title is capitalized. According to our unseen narrator, in the good old days, back when myths were considered a valid historical source, there were these magical heroes called shepherds. Not sheep herders, mind you, but literal saviors of the world who allegedly showed up whenever things got too grim. The setup is simple. Bad things happen, the world spirals into chaos, people start talking, cue the dramatic entrance, a shepherd appears, and just like that, darkness is defeated, problem solved. Until it isn't, because here's the catch.
But with peace returned, it was never long before the shepherds would vanish.
That's right. These guys were basically the fantasy version of a dad who goes out for milk and never comes back. Nobody knows where they go, they just disappear. Every time. Over and over. I like to think of it as a cursed superhero cycle.
And, as with all things, eventually they faded into legend.
Translation, we stopped asking questions. Now here's where it gets interesting, or depressing, depending on your threshold for abandoned hope.
Now, once again, the world faced the threat of the darkness.
And surprise, surprise, no shepherd. No miraculous arrival, no cinematic entrance, just radio silence. The people hoped, the people waited, and this time no one came. So we're left with the world in decline and a collective mythology clinging to a hero who may not even exist anymore. If that's not a metaphor for disillusionment with organized religion, lost institutions, or just society's reliance on saviors instead of self-reflection, I don't know what is. In short, the world is burning, the people are praying, and the shepherd? might be done taking calls. This is where the game drops us into our actual story, which opens not with a bang, but with a nerd. A very enthusiastic, ancient ruin-obsessed nerd named Sorey, who's poking around a wall mural outside some ruins like he's Indiana Jones but with more sincerity and fewer survival instincts.
I knew it! A hero brandishing the sacred blade! This mural is a depiction of the shepherd!
Sorey, bless him, is the kind of guy who treats dusty art like it's a celebrity sighting. He's giddy, overwhelmed, possibly needs professional help. Enter Mikleo, his equally curious and slightly more rational best friend who delivers the ever-important JRPG ritual, the skeptical counterpoint.
Let's not jump to conclusions just yet.
And right there, you already get the dynamic. Sorey is excitement, Mikleo is restraint. Together, they're what you'd get if you split the average archaeologist's brain into two anime boys. Cue the dramatic storm, the ominous foreshadowing, and some casual death-defying acrobatics that end with them crash landing deep into the ruins. Classic, oops, we found a plot-relevant dungeon energy. And in true anime fashion, they immediately stumble upon a person. Unconscious, alone, lying dramatically on the floor.
It's a human.
Sorey says like he's just discovered a new species. Mikleo, on the other hand, goes full isolationist.
We shouldn't involve ourselves with their kind.
Charming. This is where the story pivots, because Sorey, the eternal optimist, insists on helping the girl. Mikleo reluctantly agrees, but it's clear he's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And by shoe, I mean giant demonic spider, which, to the game's credit, does drop. Welcome the idea of Hellions. This one is part spider, part demon, all nightmare fuel. And the only thing worse than fighting one? Realizing you can't fight it.
We can't beat a Hellion without the power of purification.
Translation. This game has rules, and we haven't unlocked that mechanic yet. The spider leaves, and the two continue their forbidden spelunking session, casually opening ancient treasure chests and discovering invisible walkways like it's no big deal. Eventually, they reach the girl, and Sorey, proving he's incapable of learning from experience, gives her spear back without question. Mikleo tries the old boo test, which the girl fails in the most telling way possible, by ignoring him completely.
Yep, she's human all right.
She's also surprisingly composed for someone who just woke up in a haunted pit, but Sorey doesn't seem to notice. He invites her to their secret Seraphim-filled village without hesitation, because that's just what he does.
I can't just abandon someone in need.
Those are the last words of every kind-hearted fool who brings a cursed artifact, or in this case, an ominous woman, into a sacred hidden society. Mikleo protests, the girl deflects, and Sorey continues being Sorey, trusting, pure, and seconds away from a dramatic plot twist. As they walk off together, Mikleo quietly panics about what Gramps is going to say when they return home with a literal outsider in tow. And Sorey? He's too busy trying to make small talk with someone who may or may not destabilize the entire spiritual balance of the world.
Too bad we didn't meet in better circumstances.
You can say that again, Sorey, but something tells me these were exactly the circumstances meant to happen. Now emerging from the shattered stones of the ruins, Sorey, Mikleo, and the stranger pause at the entrance of the ruins. As he cracks his back and congratulates them both,
We made it back in one piece.
She gazes across the hidden basin of Elysia with wide eyes, half expecting to see invisible guardians roaming among the pillars. In that instant, two worlds collide. Hers, shaped by stories of unseen spirits, and his, lived every day in their company. When she names those spirits Seraphim, Sorey can barely contain his delight. Quoting the celestial record, he defines them as
Things which cannot be seen or explained, such as gods, spirits, or supernatural phenomena.
You've read it too?
Her astonished reply ignites an easy camaraderie. Both were children of that ancient text, nourished on its myths and mysteries. Yet as they press on toward his village, it becomes clear that her knowledge remains purely academic. Passing through the invisible barrier into Elysia, Mikleo slips away to tattle to Gramps. The townfolk gather around Sorey's guest, unseen, unheard, unknowable. She peers at an empty town, convinced this is some private performance he stages for her benefit. Awkward. Sorey heads off to Gramps' while he lets the stranger explore the town he calls home. At Gramps' place, hope and hospitality shatter against old laws.
How could you bring a human into our domain?
He reminds Sorey that ordinary people cannot resonate with Seraphim, and that any breach risks exposing Elysia's sanctuary to encroaching darkness. Sorey, moved by compassion and unwilling to abandon someone in need, pleads for mercy. Gramps' reluctant agreement buys some time to make things right, crystallizing Sorey's central dilemma: loyalty to his adoptive family versus empathy for a fellow human. With that fragile reprieve, another discovery awaits, at Sorey's home when Mikleo shows up, and brings the feather-trimmed fingerless glove from the ruins. When Sorey slips it on, we get a glimpse of the glove. There's a crest of some sort. Mikleo names it the Mark of the Shepherd, the symbol of one who can call Seraphim's purifying powers. In the quiet gleam of cloth and feathers, Destiny's weight settles on Sorey's hand, and the title he once read about becomes a tangible possibility. In any case, to bide the hours and help the girl prepare for her departure, Sorey leads his guests into the fields where they hunt prickleborers, and he shares stories of wrestling and evading them as the only way to learn swordplay. She laughs at his earnest recollections of being tossed and bruised until he learned to adapt. As they repair for the night, she speaks of her home, the capital of Ladylake, once a festival-rich city now beset by storms, mysterious illness, and rumors of the dead rising. Her tone shifts from wonder to urgency. Crops will fail, famine looms, and war will likely follow. All they can clutch are the legends written in that same celestial record. Regardless, Sorey heads to Gramps' to let him know she's ready and leaving in the morning. And in that next morning, Sorey and the young woman pause at the threshold of Elysia. Here, beneath the sky, gratitude and awkwardness entwine. She murmurs a heartfelt,
"I really owe you."
And he, ever the courteous guide, asks if she'll manage on her own.
"I cannot cause more trouble for you than I already have."
Her reply hangs between them, a gentle acknowledgement of the chaos her arrival has sown. In that hush, she offers the first true glimpse of herself,
Alisha.
finally naming the stranger he rescued without even asking for a name in return. Her confession, that as a knight she feels ashamed for neglecting such basic courtesy, paints her as both earnest and humble. Sorey's simple,
It's okay.
it's the moment their bond moves from mere obligation to genuine concern. Alicia's next revelation reaches beyond personal grace. She believes the legends of Seraphim are real, that the celestial record contains truths potent enough to save a world unraveling beneath relentless storms and creeping malevolence. When she speaks of the one who can restore order, Sorey's quiet acknowledgement,
The shepherd, you mean?
carries the weight of destiny. No mockery follows her earnest faith. Instead, his respectful assent validates her hope and hints that he might, against all expectations, be the one those myths foretold. As Alisha officially leaves town, Mikleo shows up with a dagger bearing the crest of Highland, Alicia's own insignia. Gramps ordered Mikleo to look for clues about the girl in the ruins, and that's what he found. Sorey takes it. Just then, Gramps senses a Hellion stalking Elysia, which pivots the narrative from tender departure to brutal reality. The fox-like fiend's cold feast and maniacal threats shatter any lingering tranquility. It sets Sorey's arm on fire and eats a villager in front of them before escaping like the smug demon it is.
He ate Mason. Is this what Hellions are capable of?
Away with you, evil being!
Or you want to take us all on at once?
I shouldn't be snacking anyway. Not when the main course is getting away.
Not exactly subtle. That's a hard line to come back from. Gramps confirms the worst. Hellions weren't born that way. They were living beings, people, animals, seraphs, you name it, consumed by malevolence, warped into monsters. Suddenly, the celestial record becomes more than bedtime lore. It becomes a survival manual. And now, the main course, Alisha, is out there alone. That night, Sorey's resolve crystallizes.
Not when the main course is getting away.
Haunted by the Hellion's parting words, realizing that this main course is probably Alisha, He packs a bag and slips away under the moonlight. Mikleo intercepts him on the path, refusing to let his friend shoulder this burden alone. With a shared grin and a pipe handed down from Gramps himself,
And there's a message for you as well. Walk the path you believe in, and live your life to the fullest. And I know you will not go astray.
they set off together, two companions bound by newfound purpose. The shepherd's journey, once a distant legend, now begins in earnest, not to preserve myth, but to protect the fragile humanity that believes in it. And standing at the edge of a cliff, Mikleo and Sorey finally get a glimpse of the vast world beyond their sheltered village. Mikleo, breathless with wonder, Sorey, bursting with excitement. It's a quiet but powerful moment, the kind that makes you feel like you're stepping into something bigger than yourself. And then the narrator cuts in to kill the vibe, reminding us that humanity, in all its fragile glory, depends on legends like the shepherd to save it from total collapse. The final line,
This is his story.
lands like a soft drum beat. It marks the start of Sorey's journey and reframes everything before this moment as prologue. The world is beautiful, sure, but it's also falling apart. And now it's up to one optimistic history nerd and his invisible water-bending bestie to try and fix it. Sorey and Mikleo's grand debut into the human world begins with an enthusiastic hike through Arndite Forest, where Sorey learns that Mikleo apparently has been moonlighting as a cartographer.
It's not complicated. I've been collecting information for this very day.
As they reach a cliff with a scenic view of Ladylake, they marvel at the beauty of the world below, before casually wondering whether it's also swimming in invisible evil energy. You know, typical tourist worries. The vibe is pastoral serenity meets existential dread. But Sorey, ever the optimist, decides it's probably fine. He's got a centuries-old map and 0 street smarts. What could go wrong? Their arrival at the city is a crash course in human society. Capitalism in the form of smugglers with a code of honor, and a whole town where the water and, the kids are literally corrupted by malevolence. One rug vendor even comes with a bonus hellion wife. But Mikleo, with all the practicality of a ghost therapist, reminds Sorey that punching civilians probably isn't the solution. As they explore more of Ladylake, the irony thickens. Sorey's in awe of the beautiful sanctuary, yet it's completely devoid of spiritual energy. Malevolence is everywhere. Hellions are hiding in plain sight, and our heroes are powerless to stop it. Welcome to civilization. Eventually, while exploring the Noble District, Sorey and Mikleo's idyllic cultural field trip takes a sharp turn when their foxy nemesis shows up, radiating malevolence and blue fire. Thankfully, a conveniently aggressive dog takes the lead, and the boys follow it like two kids playing detective in a medieval-themed anime. Once cornered, Foxman reappears from nowhere and the fight begins. During the brawl, the boys realize the Fox guy is much stronger than before. Foxman then launches into what I'll call his signature move, flamethrower and dramatic gloating. Mikleo gets absolutely bodied into a wall, and Sorey is about to become a cautionary tale, until, plot twist, a group of hooded assassins shows up and shuts the whole thing down with the kind of corporate efficiency you'd expect from a fantasy HR department. Dagger to the thigh, stern lecture, and a quick drag off stage for the offending fox. Apparently his name is Lenar, and he went off script, broke the code, and now has to sit in the corner and think about what he did. But just as they vanish into the shadows, the assassins drop an ominous nugget. Alicia's still a target, just not their target. They suggest Sorey hightail it to the Sacred Blade's pedestal, toss in the word honor for dramatic flair. Wait, wasn't somebody recently talking about honor or dishonor? Anyway, they disappear like morally ambiguous ghosts. So naturally, Sorey and Mikleo scramble to get into the sanctuary. The front is a madhouse, and the back is guarded by two guys whose only real defense is bureaucracy. Q, Rose, and a shady associate, offering VIP access for 1,000 gold, because nothing says divine destiny like bribing your way into holy ground. Oh, and gold is the currency in this world. Anyway, Sorey, ever the lawful good archetype, refuses to buy his way in. Actually, I don't think I had the money to do it. So I decided to reconfront the guards and flash Alicia's royal dagger like a backstage pass to an RPG concert. It works. The guards fold, but not before asking Sorey to hand over his sword because safety. And just like that, our heroes step into the sanctuary grounds, a little bruised, a little confused, and very much in over their heads. The chaos that unfolds in Ladylake's sanctuary is essentially what happens when centuries-old mythology meets local government mismanagement and a community outreach festival. The result? Mild arson, spontaneous monster transformations, and our archaeology nerd being forced into religious leadership with no training, no consent forms, and a fever coma as a welcome gift. It starts out pretty standard. Sorey and Mikleo finally make it to the Sacred Blade Festival. They're here to look at a historical artifact and maybe prevent a politically motivated murder, but mostly it's about vibes. Sorey finds Alisha, who's playing her part as both princess and public relations department, and we meet Lady Maltran, a woman whose presence implies that diplomacy can be learned by sticking people with a spear. They're cordial, Sorey is awkward, Mikleo is invisible. So far, so Zestiria. Sorey tells Alisha about the recent Hellion activity and assassination attempts, and Alisha responds the way trauma-trained royalty always do. Yeah, that tracks. She thanks him and tells him to enjoy the festival. You know, between the murder attempts and all. Back at the main room, the Sacred Blade Festival has begun, Highland's annual Please Pull the Magic Sword and Save the World contest. Citizens line up for a shot at eternal glory, or a hernia. It's more noble than public execution, but slightly less entertaining. Under the sword, Sorey sees a woman. No one else but Mikleo notices her. He's a seraph, so that's natural. But Sorey has protagonist vision, thanks to being raised by Seraphim. I'm sure we'll learn more about his origins at some point, right? But this is where things start to escalate. Quickly. During the ceremonial lighting of the flames of purification, the crowd does what crowds in fantasy worlds do best. Lose their minds. The place becomes a riot, complete with class warfare, thrown rocks, weaponized yelling, and because this is Zestiria, Hellions forming directly out of bad vibes. The seraph by the pedestal fully wakes up and tries to offer emotional guidance like a self-help audiobook, but nobody can hear her except Sorey and Mikleo, so the sanctuary starts birthing Hellions like it's some kind of spiritual horror film. Mikleo warns,
This whole riot was a setup.
And it's becoming painfully clear that this was never about a festival. It was about creating the kind of mass panic that breeds malevolence. Anger, fear, despair, aka fuel for monsters. Sorey starts yelling at invisible forces in the middle of the spiritual emergency. Not exactly great for optics, but she speaks.
The power of purification is not my own. It is a power given to those who would draw the sacred blade and become my sword.
In other words, she's not your miracle fix, she's the tutorial for shepherdom. As the flames spread and townspeople morph into monsters, Sorey makes the executive decision to grab the sacred blade and become the shepherd. Not because he wants to be a religious messiah, but because someone has to put out the hellfire and maybe stop the blob monsters from eating the altar.
Then I'll do it.
The ultimate main character moment. But this seraph doesn't hand out power lightly. She warns him.
To become my sword is to serve as a vessel for me to dwell in, and to assume the shepherd's burden. Blessed with the power of purification and abilities beyond human ken, cursed to be scorned by others and wrought with despair. To protect this land from the Hellions means a constant stream of agonizing decisions. It is a lonely battle, the likes of which you can scarcely imagine.
Translation, you get the sword and supernatural abilities, but also the isolation, public scrutiny, and moral pain on a biblical scale. We also finally learn her name, Lailah. So Sorey listens, nods, and does it anyway.
My dream is to investigate ancient ruins all over the world. I believe that the legends of the past hold knowledge about how humans and Seraphim might one day live in harmony together. I must find a way to make that happen, to bring humans and Seraphim together again, as it was in the days of yore.
So it's because ruins are neat, and ancient harmony is apparently enough of a mission statement to change the trajectory of your entire life. Lailah accepts.
I've waited long for this moment.
And then we get one of the most dramatic protagonist moments in JRPG history. Sorey draws the blade, the wind howls, and just like that, a kid with nothing but idealism and a glove with a weird mark has just become the most important figure in the world. What follows is nothing short of divine house cleaning. Sorey and Lailah purify Hellions, douse malevolent flames, and literally pull a man out of the fire and back into human form.
Sorey!
Are you really?
Yep. I am the shepherd now.
Sorey confirms to a stunned Alisha. Also, he's standing and talking like a very polite apocalypse just happened here. Enter Chancellor Bartlow, who walks in and decides now's the time to cancel the festival.
The shepherd of all things.
He mutters like someone just gave a sword to the intern. He doesn't arrest Sorey, doesn't thank him, doesn't even ask what the hell just happened. He simply schedules a meeting. Classic politics. And then we get the kicker. Sorey collapses. Lailah says,
It's because I have entered his body.
apparently bonding with the Seraph is like installing divine software on outdated hardware. It takes a few days to reboot.
I think I'll take a nap. For about 3 days.
And so he passes out in Alicia's lap. The mark of the shepherd glows, the crowd is gone, the festival is over, and our boy is already down for the count. Because in Tales of Zestiria, you don't just pull the sword from the stone. You pull it, use it to fight evil, clean up an institutional failure, and then fall into a coma while the world quietly resets around you. All in a day's work for a shepherd. This is where I pause the story for this episode. If you've made it this far in Tales of Zestiria, congratulations, you've survived the serene apocalypse that is essentially the game's prologue arc. It's an opening that blends political unrest, religious pageantry, invisible ghost magic, and small-town boys who dream of archaeology but end up inheriting divine burdens. It's kind of like Indiana Jones meets National Treasure, but with more magic and fewer hats. Now that Sorey has pulled the sacred blade and become the shepherd, the world's reluctant new messiah, it's worth stepping back to examine what this story has actually been building toward all along. Because behind the pleasant fantasy sheen, Zestiria has actually been quietly loading the world with quite a bit, like it's preparing to emotionally gut punch its audience later. And spoiler, it is. Let's talk about the foreshadowing that paid off during this part of the game. From the very first cutscene, the game plants its narrative thesis.
Now, once again, the world faced the threat of the darkness. And the people began to speak of the shepherds once more. But alas, no shepherd came forth to guide his people to peace.
Which is a pretty bold opening statement. Before we even meet our protagonist, the narrator's already laying the weight of the entire world on him. He's not introduced as a person, but as a response to crisis. So it's no surprise that Sorey's dream,
To investigate ancient ruins all over the world.
starts to warp under the gravity of that expectation. From a distance, Sorey's dream sounds cute, harmless. But as we move forward, we see how that dream sets him up for disillusionment. He's essentially hoping to study the mythology of a system he's about to be drafted into. It's like wanting to visit the Vatican archives and accidentally becoming the Pope. His early enthusiasm,
Whole world filled with things I don't know about? That sounds intense. Awesome.
foreshadows the eventual moment when he realizes that knowledge isn't just empowering, it's burdensome and isolating. His gift, being able to see Seraphim, isn't a blessing in society's eyes, it's a red flag, and soon, the more he learns, the more alone he's likely to become. Now, what about Malevolence? Malevolence is the game's version of dark energy. It's also a metaphor with sharp teeth. The idea that
evil in people's hearts gives rise to malevolence.
and that it can literally turn people into monsters, externalizes emotional damage in a world that represses it. The Sanctuary Riot is the perfect example here. What starts as legitimate political unrest
Some prayer, all right. This prayer of yours gonna give us our jobs back?
spirals into literal hellspawn, which isn't subtle, but it is meaningful. The game is showing us that society's problems are festering emotional toxins. In this world, unresolved pain becomes environmental hazard. That's more than fantasy lore, that's commentary on how neglected people, especially the poor and disenfranchised, are treated like they become problems rather than have them. This system of repression, of refusing to acknowledge pain, creates the very thing it fears. Just like the government ignores people until they riot, the world ignores its own emotional rot until it erupts into hellions. And who has to clean up the mess? The shepherd, of course, because in Zestiria, salvation isn't institutional, it's deeply personal and deeply unfair. What other concepts did we get introduced to here? There's the Sacred Blade. It's exactly what you'd expect it to be, an object of divine power that only the chosen can wield. But how it's used is more important than what it does. The sword, buried in a pedestal and surrounded by fire, is the oldest symbol in the book. It's Excalibur, it's the Holy Grail, it's destiny in weapon form. But there's a twist. Here, it's tied to purification, not conquest. You don't draw it to dominate, you draw it to suffer. Sorey's choice to draw the sword,
That's why I shall become the shepherd,
is both heroic and tragic, especially when Lailah lays it out in plain language.
To protect this land from the Hellions means a constant stream of agonizing decisions. It is a lonely battle.
Drawing the sword is a kind of self-sacrifice ritual. The boy doesn't become king, he becomes a vessel. This echoes in Lailah's magic too. She's a seraph, but she's no guardian angel. She hides within Sorey's body post-bonding, an invasive, eternal presence. It's intimate, almost parasitic. Their relationship is symbiotic at best, creepy at worst. But symbolically, she represents spiritual obligation, this divine presence that now lives inside him, affecting his body, his choices, his future, even his temperature. Well, we've talked about Sorey plenty, right? What about the other characters? Let's start with Mikleo. Mikleo is the mirror of what Sorey could have been. Curious, cautious, rational. He exists on the periphery of the action, offering dry commentary like,
Now that's a creepy sight.
as Lailah fuses with Sorey, but his very presence contrasts Sorey's fate. Mikleo is still invisible to the world. He doesn't have the burden of being seen. That invisibility is safety, but also distance. From power, from suffering, from responsibility. It's a quiet privilege. Then there's Alisha, who carries the completely opposite curse. She is visible, politically, socially. She's a public figure, and it's eating at her. The scene where she says,
But even so, I cannot live my life in fear of them.
is heartbreaking. She doesn't deny the danger, she just refuses to shrink from it, and yet her voice still trembles with the weight of her role. Like Sorey, she is used as a symbol, but unlike him, she doesn't get magical powers to cope with it. Both characters serve as narrative foils, showing what Sorey's journey could have been if he'd made different choices. Together, they illustrate the game's ongoing tension between duty and desire, between being seen and being safe. Now, what Tales of Zestiria does most effectively in this early arc is reveal a world built on the unseen. Unseen monsters, unseen emotions, unseen seraphim, unseen power struggles. But there's a deeper message here about being unacknowledged. Whether it's the Hellions formed from people's inner darkness or the seraphim that walk among humans, unseen and unheard, this world is haunted by all the things it refuses to deal with. Even Sorey starts to fracture under the weight of being the one who can see it all. The game literally knocks him unconscious for 3 days after his awakening as Shepherd, as if to say, welcome to enlightenment. It sucks. So by the end of this act, Zestiria has made its point clear. This is not a story about a boy saving the world with the power of love and friendship. This is a story about bearing witness to a broken system. It's about knowledge that isolates, power that poisons, and idealism that might just get you killed. Sorey enters this world with dreams of ancient ruins and ends his arc on Alisha's lap, spiritually gutted and unconscious. But that's the story he chose. And whether he knew it or not, the real ruins were always the world itself. Okay, yes, the jokes are cheesy. Dialogue sometimes feels like it's been filtered through a translator with a soft spot for awkward dad humor. But there's something about JRPGs that just keeps pulling me back in, like a nostalgic black hole lined with sentimental orchestras and boss battles that can take 45 minutes. I grew up on game stories. Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 were basically my holy texts. I also had games like Planescape Torment, where the emotional trauma comes wrapped in philosophical monologues and deeply repressed companions. So yeah, let's just say I've got a pretty wide emotional palette. And while Zestiria may not be the most elegant writer in the game, it's doing something that still works. It makes me feel things, even when it's buried under layers of exposition, UI windows, and metaphysical headaches. Now before I go, yes, I do know there's an anime based on this world, and yes, that definitely factored into me picking it up. But I won't be watching the anime until I finish the game. It's my own personal rule. Experience one adaptation at a time when possible. It'll be like dessert after dinner, or therapy after a JRPG. Originally, I thought this breakdown series would be 4 episodes, which was adorable. It took me almost 3 hours of gameplay to get to this point in the game, and at the time of this recording, I'm about 50 hours into the game and just crossed the Great Camelot Bridge, so yeah, this thing's gonna need more than 4. I've had to rework my structure a bit to keep things manageable. For those of you playing along or just following the story, the next episode will cover everything up to our first encounter with the main antagonist. No spoilers, but trust me, the vibes shift hard. I'll stop right before waking up in that forest afterward. I've got a lot of ground to cover. There is a lot that happens between now and then, but I think that's where the game really starts pulling back the curtain on its true narrative weight, and I want to give that beat the breathing room it deserves. Also, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Is this episodic format okay, or would you prefer a single long-form analysis? The shorter structure lets me hit a steady 1 video or more per month pace while I juggle, real life. But when this is all said and done, I will compile everything into one long marathon video for the binge watchers out there. And maybe, I'll go deeper into the characters themselves because, let's be honest, some of these people need to be psychologically unpacked with gloves and tweezers. If you want deep dives on Sorey, Mikleo, Alisha, Lailah, or anybody else we meet in the game, including antagonists, let me know in the comments. And while we're opening side quests, I've also got more thoughts brewing about The Wolf Among Us, so keep an eye out for that too. Oh, before we close, let's talk combat. Because from this point forward, the battle system starts to matter, and yeah, it can be a bit much. The monoliths and skits, those optional dialogues at save points, inns, and discovery points, they actually do a decent job of explaining mechanics, but here's the short version. If you're like me and playing on normal difficulty just to get through the story, if you at least try to fuse equipment and align your gear skills, even if you don't fully understand it, you'll be fine to set yourself on auto for most field battles. Just don't avoid the battles. You need the experience to keep up with the enemies that get stronger in each new area you end up in. Oh, also, it seems like each area has some sort of optional field boss. They're usually noticeably malevolent and very strong. I would suggest avoiding them for now. That's what I did. The first one I encountered, I got through this whole field and saw this malevolent beast, thought it was just another field battle, then I just got slaughtered and had to re-explore the whole area again. With that said, the only time you really have to start implementing some strategery is when you're up against bosses, and honestly, I kinda like that. Easy doesn't mean brainless, and challenge doesn't have to mean suffering. I'm here for a story, not to rip out my hair. Anyway, that's where I'll leave it for now. Next time, we wrap things up in Ladylake, we're headed to Marland, expect plague, purification, and a surprise meeting that changes everything. Because this world may be broken, but the story's just getting started. And if there's one thing Zestiria is trying to teach us, it's this. Some burdens are chosen, others are inherited, but either way, they all leave scars. Thanks for watching.